Well, hello out there in YouTube land. This is Tim, and I'm going to continue my series of YouTube shorts on active Bible prophecies. This is part two. Last time we looked at mass transit, travel, increased knowledge, and technology from Daniel 12:4. This time we're going to go into a major passage on Bible prophecy. It's located in Matthew 24. So if you have your Bibles and would like to turn there, or you can just follow along, I'm going to read from there. And there's one prophecy that Jesus gives that is fulfilled just 3 decades after his death, burial, and resurrection. So it's about 33 AD at the time of this prophecy, and this prophecy gets fulfilled in 70 AD. So Matthew 24, I'll pick it up in verse 1. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, See not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? So there's 3 things he says there. When shall these things be? When those stones going to get thrown down? And what shall be the sign of thy coming, singular, sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? So it's a 3-part question. And the first part, where the one stone was not left on top of another, came down in 70 AD when the Roman Emperor Titus came down to Jerusalem and laid siege to the city. His troops did, and they burned the temple, and the gold and silver and precious metals that were in the temple, fire got so hot it melted and ran down between the cracks in the stones of the temple. And sure enough, they took it apart stone by stone so they could get all the precious metals out. So that's a very interesting prophecy that Christ gives them regarding that temple. Verse 4, and Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. So one of the first things there's going to be is a lot of deception. Verse 5, For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And that's perceived as 2 parts. One, a person actually saying that they are Christ, or another person saying that Jesus is the Christ, but they still end up deceiving many. And he says, And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye not be troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Of course, we've had a lot of wars since the time of Christ. And of course, in the past century, World War I and World War II were the 2 great wars there. Verse 7, For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Now, I'm going to stop there for this short study. But here's some of the signs. There's going to be people deceiving in the name of Christ or saying that they are Christ. And that's obviously gone on. A lot of cults started in the 1800s here in the United States. There were some false religions before that. But you have groups like the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, et cetera, et cetera. I just really can't go into them all. But you'll see that there. So there's an obvious sign that has been fulfilled in our lifetimes. You shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. All you need to do is look at the news any day of the week. Lots of wars. I think the last time I saw, there was about several dozen to 50 wars going on across the world at any time. Warring factions of this. This is not to mention the war on drugs, the war on poverty, and everything else the United States declares war on. That's one of those things. And he says, And see that ye not be troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So this doesn't necessarily start the end as he's coming back, but there's a period coming in here. He says, For nation shall rise against nation. Verse 7 is kind of a key here. Nation against nation. We have a lot of racial things going on now in the United States. If you thought it was bad in the 60s, it's 10 times worse now with BLM and everything else going on. And then you've got kingdom against kingdom. The kind of country against country. This could also be spiritual kingdom, Christ's kingdom against the devil's kingdom, but usually kingdoms of this world is what that's referring to. And this isn't an outright war as we see in verse 6, but this is maybe a cyber war going on that we've seen here recently the last couple of years. And there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places, or what we call different places, old English term there. Famines, we tend to see a lot of that across the continent of Africa and also in the Middle East. Not so much here in the United States and other places, but again, it says, various places. So that's one. And then there's a key one down here called pestilences. And pestilences are diseases and pandemics. And of course, right now we're still in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, or Wuhan Red Death, or whatever you want to call it, that came out of China, probably from a lab. And we've had Ebola rise up here and there. We had the bubonic plague way back in the day, but there's been some occurrences here recently too in some countries. So famines, pestilence, and earthquakes. We've obviously had a lot of earthquakes, and I'm going to throw an extra one in here for you from the book of Jude. And let's see if I can find it over here. Okay, well, I'll just turn to the book of Jude. How about that? And a very, very, very interesting prophecy on this one, because you'll recall this. There's been two cases. One, was it 2000, 2001? And then the other one was in 2011. So let me see if I can find this down here. Boy, look at me not be able to find it. There's so many of these things. I should be able to find it by chapter here. Well, he talks about, I'll tell you what it is. He talks about the seas or the waves raging. Let me see if I can just do a quick look up here on a word lookup, and I should be able to find it. Jude 1:13, raging waves of the sea. No, that's not what I want. Darn it. But he talks about essentially tsunamis. If I can, I think if I look up that word here, I will find it fairly quick. And I apologize because I thought I had it right here. Luke 21:25. I'm sorry, I stand corrected myself. I had the wrong book altogether. Luke 21:25, which is kind of the companion passage here in Matthew 24. Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 17, and Luke 21 have a lot on the prophecies. So Luke 21:25, there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. And we obviously saw a couple tsunamis, one in Southeast Asia. I think it was 2001, right around Christmas Day, or right on Christmas Day. And there were just hundreds of thousands of people wiped out on the coastlines of those nations that it affected. Indian Ocean is where that was. And then, of course, the tsunami in Japan in March of 2011 that eventually set off the nuclear reactors there. So those are some more specific prophecies there. So we've come across mass transit travel, increased knowledge technology, people coming in the name of Christ deceiving people, wars, rumors of wars, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, famines, pestilences, earthquakes, and I just gave you the one on tsunami. So we're now through 11 different prophecies that are to happen in the end times. And when the disciples asked Jesus back in Matthew 24, he says, what shall be the sign of thy coming? And they're looking for just a sign, and he gives them many signs. So in order for these signs to be singular as a sign, they would all have to happen in the same time frame. And that's what you're seeing going on right now, about eight or nine of these things going on all at the same time. And then that's not including the one he gave him that was going to happen some 37 years later after he talked to him in this passage. If you've watched my first video, I did cover a little bit on the UFO announcement by the government. You'll notice that I talked about the accuracy of Bible prophecy, the statistical probability of prophecies happening in the Bible. So for 8 prophecies to happen, That would be like filling up the state of Texas with silver dollars 2 feet deep, marking one of the coins and having a blind man find it. So those are the odds I just gave you tonight. Have a good evening.